περνάμε σε ένα επόμενο πάνελ σχετικά με τα short-term rentals. Και γι' αυτό βρίσκεται μαζί μας ο Ιβάν Μπλάση, ο κύριος Αλέξανδρος Αγγελόπουλος και η κυρία Μάρα Παπαβασιλείου, αρχιτέκτονας και συνιδρύτρια του γραφείου Micromega. Welcome back on stage. I'm sure that we're not alone.
Hope so.
But still we would have a lot to talk about. Καλώς όρισες, Μάρα, όπου βολεύει καλύτερα. So, μέχρι να έρθει στη σκηνή ο κύριος Αγγελόπουλος, μπορούμε να ξεκινήσουμε ίσως τη συζήτηση. Όχι, είναι ήδη εδώ. Καλώς όρισες πίσω. So, Mr. Blasi, there's a lot of talk both for and against the phenomenon of short-term rentals. Examining the phenomenon from the perspective of both visitors and residents of a city, what is your opinion?
Great. So I was hearing before that there's no over-tourism in Greece, which I find fantastic, but I come from a place that has also appeared several times. My country, Catalonia, it's 8 million inhabitants, and we have 15 million tourists per year. Barcelona, my city, the small city, 2.5 million inhabitants, not the metropolitan area, it receives 10 million inhabitants. So obviously there is a very, very strong impact. And there's also a very strong impact in many different ways, and as we were also speaking about the importance of data, some months ago, they released that luxury hotels and luxury kind of spaces in the city of Barcelona, which account for 13% of the total, each person, each day, spend 545 liters of water. Okay? The average, myself, for example, is 104 liters. Okay? So it's 5 times more. So sometimes we relate it to the kind of tourism that we want, if it has to be of one type or the other. But I think that I'm saying this because obviously, even if I'm speaking of another place, but it's also the Mediterranean area, this has an impact all over the world, because this also forms an attitude, a way to understand how we travel. And sometimes we are not aware. We can speak about how many of these projects that might appear over here, the high quality of them or so on, but we are all travelers, we're all tourists, and so we have a very, very strong impact. And before there was a moment in which, for example, there was, somebody spoke about the use of stone instead of other kind of non-natural materials because of its warmth and so on. But we need to be very, very aware of, or it would be important that we are always aware of where that stone comes from, the impact that it has had in extraction and so on. There was another study also from this summer that explained that the working conditions, exclusiveness for workers and so on in the city of Barcelona was really, really very strong. But it was not only in Barcelona. It was a study that brought together different European cities. It was a transnational study in which there was Ljubljana, that we heard that it has kind of Slovenia in general, kind of it is a place to look at and so on, but they are also suffering from this over tourism, the impact that it has, and some negative part to the local residents. So obviously, let's speak about also all the positive parts, which are basically economic, but people come to Barcelona because of the sun. We heard it also for other places, because of, the weather, because of the beach, and also because of the architecture. It's obvious that they want to see a series of monuments and so on. Right? Some of the images that I'm showing over here have to do with how this impact can be decreased. So instead of concentrating everything in the old part of town of the city of Barcelona, there was an intention some years ago to try to spread it to other places in the city. What happened is that these other places that were suddenly known by tourists, by people that arrived, suddenly became also heavily kind of densely used, and it did not decrease in the old part of town. And some of the images over here show also how there's also these projects to also bring tourists to these tourist single houses for short spans of time outside in the countryside. And how that is also increasing tourism in these areas, but not still decreasing them in some of these nucleus, such as the city. So, well, let me leave it here because there's other effects, no, that you were asking for regarding the impact that short stays have through tourism.
So it's really great the way that you connect best practices with growth and a balanced situation for all stakeholders. Mr. Angelopoulos, are there any factors that make short-term rentals competitive with hotels? Additionally, have you studied the characteristics of different segments that prefer hotels or short-term rentals?
In the Hotel Association of Greece, we found out that dealing with the short-term rentals as competitive to the, let's say, legal part of the hoteling was ineffective. And it was ineffective because there are people that would really like to see these people coming into the country, regardless of where they're staying. But that is the wrong way of looking at it. But on the other hand, if you don't have people listening to you, then what we should have done, and what we did do, is try to see the social impact of the people staying in short-term rentals. And this is where, even though we don't have over-tourism, like you correctly said, like in most places we don't, what we do have is that people staying in a city, in any city, are directly affected by people choosing the short-term rentals, because short-term rentals are not built for that purpose. They were built for people to stay in and actually serve their community. So now we see rents going up. I mean, the general cost of living in an area going up. Even in the local grocery store, people think they can push the prices 10, 20% higher because it's different to charge a tourist than rather to charge somebody that's living there. So overall, this part of hospitality, even though you can't really stop it in a way, we need to regulate it. And yes, in that sense, they are competing because the tax system in Greece is not fair to all. If you offer hospitality, then the tax system should make sure that the way that it's being treated is equal to all. A hotel, a home rental, and all we used to call them actually, and don't mind me saying that, illegal, in the sense that the law is not the same for the hotelier and for the people offering short-term rental. In that sense, people that now take care of their budget are looking a lot of how much they're willing to spend. They can find, well, pretty much a good bed, a good bathroom, and everything they need, because amenities and services are offered in short-term rentals. They can choose, especially in big cities, they can choose to stay in a short-term rental rather than a hotel. This is a direct competition, and it should be treated as such. Not ban it, not tell them you can't stay there, but tell them that the way you choose to travel should be dealt in our country the same exact way. And one final point, a hotelier needs to abide by so many different laws, needs to have insurance for pretty much anything, even the air that you breathe, and short-term rentals, well, they don't. So if you're going to be that way, make sure that the little child that died last year in one of the houses offered, actually here in Crete, because the pool did not have all the security legislations that we as hoteliers have, then don't allow them to do that. Offer them the same pack, the same deal, and then we can all move ahead and say we are offering hospitality regardless of who we are.
It's very clear that there should be some regulation in order to safeguard some equality between hoteliers and entrepreneurs in short-term rentals. But let's focus a little bit on the characteristics of travelers that prefer short-term rentals, because all this boom of the previous years kind of demonstrates that there are some people who are seeking for something else. And this doesn't have to do with the price that they pay to stay there.
Well, but this is the first driver. Mm-hmm. Price is the the main driver. You can find a house rental for 30 euros. You can't find a hotel for 30 euros because the cost of maintaining is much higher. But there are also three other factors. First of all, the internet. We can mobily choose anything we want. So this gives the control to the consumer. And now we are living in an era where the control is with the consumer. So the more control they have, the more choices they need to make. In a lot of the cities, if you're close to a metro or a bus line, if you're close to a coffee shop, and if the guy that is offering his house for rental has it clean and prepped in a way that it's serving the purpose of hospitality, then what does the customer need? And what more does he need? Nothing. Well, if you go to a hotel, for example, like this hotel, which is a hotel, a full-service hotel, then you can't really compete. But if you are in a city, the city is just for a day, 2 days. All you need is a sleep, a nice bathroom, somebody that makes sure that it's clean. And then you go downstairs, you walk downstairs because it's probably in a building apartment. You have your morning coffee, which might be better or worse, depends. You take the bus, you go to Acropolis. What's not to like about that?
So we're talking about a higher level of service. Mrs. Papavasiliou, you have often mentioned that in your office you would like to design an entire city block. What does this block look like, and how does it include the local community and travelers?
First of all, I would like to thank you. I'd like to thank Vasilis Barzokas and all the team of Design Ambassador Archisearch, and of course CAM for the invitation. Our architectural office, Micro Mega, we have been designing projects of these typologies, of house rentals or flat rentals. The truth is that when we design these projects, often the client aspires to be part of the local community. So when they want to rent just their place, which will not have all the services that you mentioned, Mr. Aggelopoulos, the idea is that you offer a clean-cut place, and then you find all you need in the city or in the village or in the island. Especially about the cities, the visitors would like this authentic experience. But what is authentic? When we find everywhere short rental houses, and the whole market is flat, and we don't have the local community as part of this experience. So this is the point where we should be careful about the whole proportion. Coming back to your question about the urban block that we would like to design, of course, tourism and guests would be part of it. And our aspiration is, because we are residents of the city, but we also travel and want to visit our cities. And as Mr. Tsakalos talked about the new generations, that they seek experiences, they will want this authenticity. So they want to be part of a community that it's not just a block of flats filled with tourists. So the limits of Airbnb and local communities should be kind of balanced. In this urban block that we would like to have, diversity and inclusivity would be the buzzwords. I am afraid to use sustainability as we did before, and I would change for resilience. So resilience in terms of local communities and uses. And as architecture and tourism bring an added value to projects, we would even imagine how could this typology of short-term rental within a block of flats could benefit to the whole project. So in Greece, we have a lot of houses that are old and nobody's investing in renovating them. It's difficult because the typical polykatikia has many owners, and it's difficult for them to find a solution. So what if we integrated a rental apartment for tourists, and all this added value would go back to the building? So it's a project that self-finances itself in a way. I mean, ideas are there. We just have to be ready and have a vision of how to integrate them.
So diversity and inclusion go together with mixed uses. Mr. Blasi, there are serious institutional players in Greece that have mentioned that some old hotels in certain destinations should be given back to the community as residences in order to address our housing problem and also to upgrade our positioning in terms of hospitality. Let's focus in the first part of this idea. How do you envision the ideal way to repurpose old and budget hotels back into housing for the community?
There are certain examples in which this has happened, and I think that one of the basic points of departure is basically trying to reuse as many things as we have. So we're seeing kind of many new hotels, new houses, new constructions in general that are used for tourism, but sometimes we do not, or we're not aware enough of all the existing structures, constructions I mean, in cities and villages, but also in kind of landscape areas that exist and that could be remodeled and transformed. This is an example that you're seeing over here, no? This old industrial center transformed into a hotel. So that would be kind of a great example. I mean, I have not much more to say about that. I think that's a way to go. But then it's speaking about hotels, no, not this short stays that can have a stronger impact for the inhabitants of a city.
What is a little bit curious for me in this case is that old hotels don't have common. They don't have a kitchen or a living room for each apartment, so there's more to see in the future. So, Mrs. Papavasiliou, I have a question which can be interpreted either politically or purely in terms of design for you. If we accept that conflicts arise from the coexistence of residents and travelers in cities and settlements due to the phenomenon of short-term rentals, can architecture play a role in resolving them?
Well, let's begin with an assumption that travelers, tourists are not part of the problem, but part of the solution. So, especially in cities where these conflicts may arise between tourists and residents, we should try and think of different ways to include these tourists. So when we design as architects, we always take into consideration local architecture, local ways of buildings, materials, resources, and to go to a step further, design, so local arts and crafts. All this creates an image of what is the city, what is the neighborhood, so that the visitors will appreciate it, will see it and want to be part of it. For us, conflicts arise when the whole system is not regulated, and to be honest, we're not in a position to do much as architects, or designers. The institutions, the politics are always the framework to work within, and it's a great opportunity, these conferences that really bring all stakeholders together in order to find this type of solutions and create a dialogue.
Some comments of yours, Mr. Angelopoulos?
Actually, both the questions that I've heard have an interest. Mrs. Kefalogianni said that they are already exploring ideas of how to put back into the market old hotels that are left inhabited, because we lack places for the people that work in this country to stay in. Now, there is a problem because our laws have a very interesting twist on how to turn a building from one use to another use. And I'm not really sure how ready they are, but if you want to change use to something that is already, for example, served its purpose as a hotel, we need to make something more, let's say, there needs some intervention, and this intervention has to be done from more than one ministries, which is always a hard thing to do in the country. But, as you say, it is absolutely necessary to find the better use of things. We saw the Xamenes before, which is actually 10 minutes away from my hotel. It's an amazing, amazing turnaround of an old building. I mean, it's really beautiful what the guys did there, and they tried to bring cultural issues into repositioning a little hotel into being something very unique, and it is very unique. And I like what you said about using materials and local, not just architecture, but everything that is local and putting it back into the creation. What we have found, for example, in the hotel, what I'm trying to do now, I found that probably 60% of the plants that I'm using are not in the ecosystem. So I need more water to water something that cannot survive in the ecosystem of the hotel that I own. So last year I started taking down everything that is not in the ecosystem, but because we don't want to throw it away, we just send it somewhere else so that it can put in better use. Putting things together is just the way that this thing has worked over the, okay, but if not Vasilis, then who? We start thinking together, and then I'm sure we can find ways of, pushing our agenda higher into this government that has the right mind. They just don't have the right people to speak to them. So we should get that position and go there and talk to them.
And let me add to that one thing. One thing is transforming it into social housing, and the other one, the free market. Because in the city of Barcelona, 9 years ago, it was forbidden to build any more hotels in the whole city. What happened? That the owners of those buildings, that they wanted to transform them into hotels, transformed them into luxury apartments. So that meant that also all around the existing housing stock also raised its price, selling or rentals and so on. So this keeps on expelling. So it's a whole strategy, an urban strategy of the city and the conurbation, the metropolitan area, to see how some policies, some regulations have consequences, and see through management and through understanding at which point we stand at each time, because we keep on developing and things change very, very fast, which are the best solutions. Another thing happening was Airbnbs, for example, being banned or not allowing to have more than a certain percentage of the amount of flats that there's in a building, okay? But then also, people finding ways to go through those regulations, which are not always totally considered legal for some people, and so they're always there in lawsuits and so on. And we have a building in Barcelona where the owner has transformed it into 150 tourist apartments. So obviously, that becomes a problem for the tourists themselves, because 54% of tourists from cruise ships, if I'm not wrong, complain about themselves, that there's too many tourists. So it's not only the experience in public spaces that we spoke about, but also when they're residing, when they're living, when they want to sleep, but it's not possible because of many problems that happen when you have all kinds of people, which change constantly. Because our behavior, unfortunately, is not the same when we travel or when we're at home in general.
Thank you all so much.
Thank you.